Hey, welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. I've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten Power Rankings episode. Week 3 just got over, and we had Maryland, Indiana, teams getting big wins, some teams on some byes, so the top of the Power Rankings don't look all that much different, but there is a lot of movement in the middle and some movement at the bottom. I got my guy, Kent Casual Big Ten, with us tonight. Kent, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great, man. What a fun week of college football. Like, I never take a Saturday for granted like this time of year. Like, it's so great to just sit down, watch football all day. And even if like we didn't have the best performance as a conference today, it's still fun to watch football, man. And I'll never take it for granted. So I'm happy to be here, man. I'm happy to talk about these rankings. This is what people get fired up about. So like, let's get into it, man. And by the way, I totally agree. Like with the buys and the way that things like kind of shook out today, I feel like the top 5 has to kind of stay the same as what it was last week.
Yeah, let's start there. So we do have some good questions. Eric's asking about Rutgers. We'll get to Rutgers here soon, and then Jacob wants to talk about IU and Nebraska. Also, we'll get to them. But let's just talk about the top 5. So I've had Nebraska in my top 5 ever since last week. Kent, your tweet I do have pulled up. You have them fourth as well, right behind Penn State. Actually, our top 5 look exactly the same: Ohio
Yeah.
State, USC, Penn State, Nebraska, Oregon. And so I don't really see issue with Nebraska over Oregon. I was getting some people last week with like, how can you say that Nebraska is a better team than Oregon? And I'm like, because I'm not living off preseason rankings anymore. Like preseason
Yeah.
rankings are great, but I retweeted a guy earlier tonight who was like my mic sounds like it is turned off. Sounds like you were going through. Oh, okay. I'll switch that. Thanks, Eric. Okay, there it is.
All right. Does that sound any better?
Oh wow, yeah, that actually does sound better. Who
Okay.
shouted you out right there? Shout out to
Okay.
Eric, right? You said Eric?
That was Eric.
Oh yeah, thanks,
Yeah. I
Eric.
was getting on here so quick. I forgot to change that. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate
Oh
that.
man, that does sound way better. Way
Okay,
better.
good. I think I was in my AirPods before. My StreamYard gets so messed up. Anyway, so like I was saying, like sometimes we live in this world of preseason rankings where I'm like, why in the world do we think so highly of Oregon when they haven't shown us that highly of them? Now, today, you could make an argument for they belong over Nebraska because of what they did to Oregon State, but I'm like, Nebraska went out and took care of Northern Iowa the way they should have. Granted, it's an FCS program, but that's a program that wanted to slow the game down, wanted to run the ball, and wanted to make this a close game with Nebraska, but Dylan Raiola is too good, and he spread the ball around to all of his different receivers and just, I mean, essentially destroyed Northern Iowa. They had like 22 minutes of time of possession and they still put up 34 points. So, like, as far as I'm concerned, there's no reason to drop Nebraska. You might have reason to bump Oregon up, but there's no reason to drop Nebraska in my mind. What do you think, Kent?
Like you know me better than anyone, JR. I hate to agree with you, but I have to. I have to. The only argument you can make with this top 5 right now is that Oregon finally had the performance that we were looking for, but then you're asking us to forget about the first 2 weeks of the season, and I can't do it. I can't forget about the Idaho game. I can't forget about Boise State basically taking them to the wire last weekend. And I'm not going to put a team in front of Nebraska who has overperformed in my mind. Maybe not by some Nebraska fan standards, but by my own personal standards, I think that Nebraska has gone above and beyond what we thought they were going to be this year. And until Oregon does something, and really, to me, it's like Nebraska almost has to make a mistake before I put Oregon back in front of them because they're solidly in front of them. And I felt the same way as you. I have them at 4, and it's going to stay that way until I feel really comfortable about Oregon or until I start feeling shaky about Nebraska. And I don't for either one of those things right now.
Totally. I totally agree. I can't see how you would think poorly enough of Nebraska after today to put them below Oregon. I could possibly see you thinking better of Oregon, but you're right. We can't just ignore the past 2 weeks. We can't just say it doesn't matter what you did against Idaho and Boise State, which granted Boise State is a better G5 team than most G5 teams, so I get that. But still, like this is this is still a G5 team that you should have. I mean, understandable for the game to be close for a little bit, but you shouldn't have need 2 special teams touchdowns to win that game. That's to me one
Yeah,
of the biggest things.
I agree. 100% I agree.
All right, let's see. Couple. Well, while we're on Nebraska, let's talk about what Java is talking about here. Illini at Nebraska next week. What do you guys think? Nebraska currently ranked 23rd. Probably will move up in the rankings, I would think. You might see Illinois ranked this week. Honestly, BC is going to be moving out. I don't know what the committee is going to think of Illinois beating. Who'd they play today? Not Nevada. I wanted to say Nevada. Who's the team that they beat today?
You said who did Illinois play today?
Yeah, Central Michigan. That's right.
And by the way, Central Michigan is not good. So like, I know we're gonna pull up my tweet here in just a second, and I have Illinois higher than you right now, but like, I expected more from Illinois today because Central Michigan got housed by FIU, and Indiana housed FIU. So just by like looking at like common opponents, if you only looked at common opponents, Indiana's better than Illinois right now. If you only looked at that, but I kept Illinois there. I kept Illinois a little bit higher than Indiana at the moment, just because same thing I said with Nebraska. They so overperformed what my expectations were going into the season, and they didn't do anything wrong. So I kept them in the same spot that they were in last week. That's why that's the reason why I didn't let Indiana jump them.
Yeah. For me, Indiana, I was so impressed with the win tonight. Not just that they won. Like I was predicting a 24-20 win for Indiana. It would be a close game, but I thought Kirk Zanetti and his coaching would take over and beat Deshaun Foster. I thought Deshaun Foster has more talented players on his team, but I was proven wrong in both regards. Indiana has more talented players. Indiana has the better coach. Indiana has the more talented quarterback. Indiana is just the better overall team from what I saw, and Indiana went into UCLA and got that win, which UCLA is not the most hostile environment in the world, but still, that's 10+ hour flight. Well, maybe not a flight. 6+ hour flight? I don't know how long flights are. I've never flown out to California. My furthest flight was like Indiana to Virginia or something like that. So I don't. We got
to go visit the West Coast, baby. Come on.
Apparently, that's what I need to do so I can get a good gauge for this stuff. But yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like. I was just overall more impressed with Indiana, and I'm very reactive with my power rankings, especially in the middle. And so I just think it's more fun that way. I think you have to really look at what a team just did, and I really value road wins, especially when they're against a UCLA team.
So my pushback to you on this particular topic, when we're just comparing Illinois and Indiana specifically, where do you have UCLA ranked? Because Indiana they went and got a road win. They went and got a conference road win against what now that I'm looking at your graphic, we both agree is the worst team in the conference. Okay. So that's Indiana's best win right now. Right. And I know Kansas went out and lost today and made that win last week for Illinois look a little bit worse, but I don't forget that though. I remember that was a big game for Illinois last week. That was a big Friday night game. We went and sold that out. We went and won that game, right? So at the time, the Kansas win, and even still, I feel like the Kansas win is better than what the Indiana win was. That's why I kept Illinois in front of them because, yeah, I'm excited for Indiana. I love Indiana. I'm glad they went out and won that game and proved that their new coach and their new players and everything are going to be what they are. But I still was more impressed last week with Illinois. Because I feel like less people thought Illinois was going to win last week than people thought Indiana was going to win this week. If you see what I'm saying here.
Yeah, I think at the beginning of the year it was a closer, conversation between Indiana and UCLA. I had some people tell me Indiana and UCLA both only going to get one win this year in the Big Ten, and that this game was going to be a deciding factor for if Indiana was even going to get one, which I was like, I think you're vastly underrating Kirk Cignetti and Curtis Rourke, both of them. I think both of them are much better than people give them credit for. But yeah, I mean, I fully acknowledge I could be overhyping Indiana a lot right now. I don't. I'm not one of those people that says, like this is this is God's word right here, and you can't argue with my power rankings. But I still look at that entire game and what they were able to show and what they were able to do. I mean, there really wasn't anything other than the penalties that I can take away from that and say Indiana didn't play well. There were things in that Illinois game versus Kansas that I can slightly critique and say you could have done better in this area, but yeah, it's going to be really, really interesting. The Nebraska-Illinois game is going to tell us a lot. I lean Nebraska personally,
Me
but
too.
when Brett Bielema is doing Brett Bielema things and he has his football teams playing the way that he wants his football teams to play, there's not a whole lot of teams in the Big Ten you can say are a guaranteed win against him.
I just like how much I said I was gonna say how much better, but I like how well Nebraska's defense is playing right now. And I think that we saw some flashes today of what Illinois like kind of is what we thought they were going to be against a really bad Central Michigan team. They should have scored 70 points on them today, in my opinion. And that offense going up against the Black Shirts next week, that's where I give Nebraska the edge, especially with it being at Nebraska. So, yeah, I definitely lean that way as well. I do have to move on to the next ranking that you have right here, though. This is probably where I have the biggest beef. Like Iowa up at 7. I have them all the way down to 12. Why are you still feeling confident about Iowa? I have to ask.
Well, I think that they still have a really good defense, and I think that the offense looked fine today. I mean, the running game for Iowa is one of the best running games in this conference. Cade McNamara is the problem with this offense.
But where was it in the first half, though?
In the first half against Troy?
Against Troy.
Well, I mean, that's how running games often work, right? You run the other team down and you tire them out, and then later on in the game, you break off your big runs like they did. I mean, they had multiple running backs. It wasn't just Caleb Johnson. They had multiple running backs who had big, long runs and were able to get through the middle, which tells me that it's not just one running back, that it's also the offensive line doing a really good job. So I haven't seen a reason other than Iowa State, which I put a bunch of that on Cade McNamara more than anybody else. I don't see a huge reason to drop them all the way outside of the top 10, to me personally. I see the Iowa State loss, and I think that's, not great, but I also think Iowa State is not a terrible football team. I guess looking at it again now, I probably could have put them below Illinois, considering Illinois had the win over Kansas, and
I
Kansas
just feel
is
like
probably a better team than Iowa State.
I look less at what Iowa actually did in this game, and I look more at who they were playing. And I just have such a problem with the last 2 weeks. It's Iowa State lost that game, shouldn't have lost it, and then it's Troy. Like, they're 0-3. They lost to Memphis, who, by the way, Memphis playing really good football right now. But they also lost to Nevada, at home. This is not a good football team that we're talking about right now. We're talking about a game that's at Kinnick. It's a game where you're pissed off, to be frank, that you just lost to your rival. You should be coming out in this game and absolutely murdering Troy. That's what should happen, in my opinion. The run game shouldn't take till the second half. You shouldn't be losing, if I'm not mistaken. I could be wrong about this because I didn't do a ton of notes on this, but yeah, they're losing at halftime to Troy at Kinnick. That shouldn't happen, in my opinion. So it's just an indictment on really their opponent more than what they actually did in the second half. Did they break off some big runs? Yeah. To me, it took too long. I don't know. I'm just not really impressed with what I've seen from them. I mean, 10 points against Troy in the first half and you're losing at halftime. I got to knock you down some points for that. I just do. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm being harsh. on the Hawkeyes.
I don't think you are. I think again, I think outside of the top 10 for me is a little harsh, but I mean, like who do you have in front of them? You have Michigan State in front of them, which like yeah, they beat Maryland and Maryland is a good football team, but also like I don't know. Like I like Aiden Childs a lot.
They shut somebody out today.
They did. I like Aiden Childs a lot, but I don't know. I feel like Aiden Childs is so boomer bust, and Maryland didn't capitalize on those turnovers that they got enough. And so,
Aiden Childs
me,
might
I
not
don't
be
know
their
if I can look
quarterback
at
going forward, by the way.
do what?
I said Aiden Childs might not be their quarterback going forward, by the way. I don't know exactly what happened in that game because I watched very little of it, but I know Matt Sheehan from Locked On Spartans was saying that there might be a quarterback controversy. I don't know if it's because he came out late in that game and the backup did well, but I'm not really sure. I got to be honest. I'm not really sure about that, but yeah, Michigan State wins 40-0. So like, has Iowa done that this year? That's a team that I expect Iowa to do that against. I expect 40-0 against Troy.
Didn't Iowa
And then
beat
they're
Illinois
in front of
State
Michigan
40-0?
State. What's that?
Didn't Iowa beat Illinois State 40-0?
Yeah, but don't you think? I guess Prairie View is pretty bad too, right? I don't know.
Prairie View. I mean, they're both FCS teams, so.
But Michigan State's 3-0. Also, by the way, I have to put Michigan State in front of Iowa because they are still number 1 in the Big Ten.
Okay.
I can't have them below. I can't have a number 1 team in the Big Ten below Iowa. I just can't do it.
They're tied for number 1 now.
Well, they're tied now, but of course, like I have Indiana in front of them as well. So my argument still stands. I don't know.
No, I see what you're saying. All right, let's talk about Michigan for a minute. All right, so I have Michigan in mine at 8. You have them in yours at 9. So we both have them around the same spot. I did drop Rutgers pretty substantially in mine just because some other teams won, and I felt like they deserved to get moved up. It wasn't necessarily a thing with Rutgers. However, I did have Iowa and some other teams in front of them. Looking at this, like I think Iowa could beat Michigan tomorrow with the way things are looking for Michigan right now. And I know people are going to say like, oh, Michigan had their backups in and late in that game. And I get that. But like, what in the world are you doing if you're Sharon Moore? Why are you putting your backups in when I get it. You're up almost 20 in that one, but still like you need to get those guys in there and actually have them playing together. They did a good job for the most part against Arkansas State, but still like if I'm Sharon Moore, I want to get my guys in there playing as much as possible, getting them gelling because things do not look super great right now in Ann Arbor. And I get that, I'm the one that has them higher than you, but I mean, do you tend to agree or where are you at with Michigan?
I don't disagree. I just don't really know. I feel like a Michigan-Iowa game tomorrow night, prime time, would be the most Big Ten fan game watched of all time. Like, if you're like a Big Ten like football fan, and I told you, hey, guess what? We're about to run it back tomorrow night. We're gonna have a game. It's gonna be Michigan versus Iowa. That would be like the most viewed game ever, even if it was on Peacock. Wouldn't matter.
That'd be fantastic.
People would check into that game because it would be like, what do we really have with these two teams? We don't know. Like, Michigan's quarterback play has been so bad. They're just not like, obviously you come off of a national championship and it's like you expect them to be a lot better. Here's what I'll say about Michigan in their defense. They got one loss right now. They have one game that they pretty much handled, and that was this afternoon. They had a very shaky game in game 1 against Fresno State where you're like, I don't know if they're going to be able to put it together this year. And then the other game is against one of the best teams in the country in Texas. So if you want to defend Michigan, you have some ground to stand on right now because your only loss is against one of the best teams. But you also have to explain to me as a Michigan fan, what are you guys going to do at quarterback? Because J.J. McCarthy is not back there. And I don't care how many tweets go out about J.J. McCarthy's throwing 3 interceptions against Bowling Green last week. Davis Warren, or I always get his name mixed up. Is it Warren Davis or Davis Warren?
Davis Warren.
Davis Warren. I want to say Warren Davis. Sound like an R&B singer. Davis Warren coming to the stage. No. He's not JJ McCarthy though, is what I'm trying to get at
Yeah,
though.
no.
He's not that guy. So he's not going to lead them back to a national championship. They need better quarterback play. They need better everything. It seems like they need to just look better aesthetically. But if you are a Michigan fan, that's what you have to lean on right now. We only have one loss, and it was to one of the best teams in the country in Texas. So that's why I really didn't move them down. I think that they did what they were supposed to kind of do today to Arkansas State. And I still think here's a big part of my power rankings, JR. I kind of wanted to bring this up too. Anytime I get pushback on any team, if you're like, why is Michigan all the way up at 9, for example, right? And you could say the same thing about your power rankings.
Right.
Tell me who's below Michigan at 8 for you right now that you think could beat them on a neutral field. And if there's not anybody, then you can't really argue with it. Like, are you going to say that Illinois is going to beat Michigan on a neutral field right now? Maybe.
I think they have a chance. I don't think I'd pick it. I think if I'm picking games, everybody I have below Michigan right now, I would pick Michigan to beat on a neutral field. Michigan State, that's a hard one just because it's a rivalry game and you just don't know. But I still think roster wise, Michigan is better. But the hardest thing for me to comprehend with Michigan is Sharon Moore, because it doesn't look like he knows what this team's identity is right now. It doesn't look like Kirk Campbell is willing to switch up his offense for Alex Orji, the player that's better for this team in my mind. Like, I've been saying this from the beginning when I did the show with John D'Adamo, when we were talking about the quarterback situation, and everybody told me I was wrong. All the Michigan fans came in and said, well, if you're a quarterback, your job is to pass the football and your job is to have an arm where you can throw. And it's like, are we really going to say that Alex Orji has been a quarterback, 2 or 3 years in college football now, where Jim Harbaugh said this is the heir apparent who's going to come in and replace JJ McCarthy after he's done, and just the entire time he couldn't throw and they thought it was magically going to change once JJ McCarthy left? No, I think Alex Orji can throw. He has touchdown passes this season. Granted, he's had some really bad throws. He's dirted balls where it didn't look like he was trying to do that at all. So he has some inaccuracies. But I look at Davis Warren, and Davis Warren is not comfortable back there in the pocket. Watch how many times he is fading away as he's throwing the ball when nobody is around him. There is some pressure coming toward him, but there is relatively nobody around him, and he is fading away throwing the ball. I look at Alex Orji, and I think he is more fearless. I think he is somebody that's going to stand in the pocket, and sure, he might run sometimes when he should, sit back there and pass, but somebody like Alex Orji who has the athleticism he does, I don't mind that. And guess what? You put him in all the time, you actually just have him start throwing the ball, then it's not telegraphed that he's just going to run it up the middle every single time, because that's every Michigan fan's biggest thing with Alex Orji. It's like, oh, we put him in the game, and then you just run read option and he keeps it to go up the middle. It's like, okay, if he throws the ball, though, they would have to respect something other than that. Granted, it could be throwing the ball 5-8 times a game, but guess what? Sharon Moore won a game when J.J. McCarthy threw the ball 8 times in that game because he could also run. He wasn't just throwing the ball. He had a threat elsewhere. Davis Warren does not present you a running threat at all. And so for me, if Michigan does beat USC next week, then I'm definitely moving them up much further. One, because of the win, and one, because that means they have to get the quarterback situation figured out. But right now, I'm looking at USC. I don't see a way that Michigan beats USC next week unless they get that quarterback situation figured out.
I will be floored. The only reason I even would tempt to lean back towards Michigan is because it is at the Big House, correct? Am I wrong about that? I don't know if you have that pulled up right now, but I think it is at Michigan. Even so, though, I would be absolutely floored based on the 3 games that I've seen from these two teams. If USC loses this game, it would be an upset, in my opinion, at this point in the season, because they have looked so much stronger. They have a better win. They have a better quarterback. Their defense is not the same defense that we saw last year that was letting up 55 points a game. That's not what we're seeing anymore. And by the way, even if they were, I don't know if Michigan would be the team to be able to put up 40, 50 points on them. Even with the defense from last year, I don't think they'd be putting up that many points. So with an improved defense, improved quarterback, yeah, man, I feel like if you're a Michigan fan, you have got to be worried about this game. And And it would be an upset if Michigan wins, in my opinion.
Well, the bettors don't agree with you because Michigan is currently favored by 8.5.
No shot. Are you
Yep.
serious?
Yeah, I got it right here on the CBS Sports app.
Put
So
$1,000 on that right now.
say, dude, Michigan favored
I've
by
been
8.5.
doing terrible betting, by the way, so don't listen to me.
I was gonna say, what are your bet big picks right now?
I'm at I'm still over 50%. I think I got to double check it, but
okay, well that's not good. That's not bad.
Yeah.
So they are favored by more than Nebraska is favored over Illinois right now.
Wow.
Yeah, Nebraska is favored by 8 over Illinois right now, which seems a little high to me, but I don't know. That's just me off, thinking about the instant reaction of this week. But yeah, so if you're a betting person and you're listening to this live, you might want to go check and see what that Michigan USC line is at right now, because I know it's
I feel
at the
like
big
that's
house.
gonna
I'm
move
with you,
big
dude,
time.
but what'd you say?
I said I think that's going to move big time by next Friday night.
Cam, I think that's how you say it. Calm says Michigan playing their first 4 games at home is hilarious. Guys are terrified going on the road. Yeah, I mean,
That's just
I don't know if I call them terrified, but it is definitely like.
I mean, but who has gone on the road? Did
themselves.
Ohio State go on the road yet?
No.
So that's such a it's such an easy thing to say against Michigan because they're like a punching bag right now. It's like all the things from last year and the cheating and the counter stallions. It's like, oh, Michigan's scared to go on the road. It's like, who's gone on the road though? Who's really gone on the road? Has Oregon gone on the road?
Maryland tonight.
I guess Maryland has. Yeah, sure. Indiana went on the road, went and picked up a big win against UCLA. I mean, no one's going on the road right now, though. It's like it's kind of ridiculous to say that just to pick on Michigan. I feel like I don't know.
Well, and I would see the credence in it if it was like another non-conference game, right? Like if they were playing another non-conference team and they chose to play them and Texas both at home. But I mean, it's a Big Ten game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but like the Big Ten is the one that schedules all this stuff, right? Like,
yeah, that's the other thing too. It's like, okay, I get it. Yeah, they got it. They should go play some non-conference games. Like Texas does it the best, by the way. I went to that Texas-Alabama game last year. They're always going on the road and picking up big wins, but that's why they made the playoffs last year.
Yeah, that's
like that win against Alabama last year. That was huge for them. So like them going on the road and getting those big wins is helpful, but like, I mean, that's more the anomaly more than the rule. I feel like a lot of these teams don't go on the road. SC or USC, I should say, is the only team that we really have in the top 5 that's gone on the road to pick up a win, and that wasn't even really on the road. It was in Las Vegas. So I don't know.
Yeah,
that's not really a big deal to me, I don't think.
Yeah, I look at more of the non-conference personally. And Cam is saying you look at the past 3 years. Yeah, they also had who were they supposed to play last year? Was it UCLA? And that got canceled because of the Big Ten, working together or whatever. So
yeah.
I mean, if we're looking at just non-conference, it's like, yeah, I think Michigan does deserve a little bit of crap for canceling the UCLA game last year, but I also would give Ohio State crap too and say, why didn't you reschedule and get a different team this year instead of putting Marshall and who are the other 2 teams? I can't remember. Western Michigan and Akron on the schedule. Like, that's but Eric's saying yes, Ohio State played on the road against Team Vi this weekend. Yeah, I'm sure they went on the road. For that one. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Next year, let's talk about Maryland. Maryland just had their game over. Okay. I have them 12th in my power ranking. You have them 13th. I mean, I know they lost to Michigan State, but going on the road, Virginia's not a good football team, but they still went on the road, beat Virginia. That was an environment where the crowd was pretty into it, so I mean, should we be looking at Maryland possibly saying they're better than a Minnesota, better than a Michigan State? Those are the other teams that are not better than a Michigan State, but better than a Minnesota, better than an Iowa. What do you think, Kent?
No, I don't think we should because they haven't given us a reason to. If you look at Maryland the last 3 years, every single year, they're usually worse in the second half of the season than they are in the first. So they've already given me a reason to not believe in them when they lost the home game against Michigan State. I'm not doing this with them this year, man. I tried this last year with them. I tried to get on board with them. I got on Twitter and YouTube and everything, and I said, this is the year Maryland's going to go in and beat Ohio State. This is the year they're going to have the team they had Tualia last year. Like, yes, let's go do this, man. This is Maryland's team. And I'm done, man. I'm done with this crap. I'm not doing it with them anymore. They already lost to Michigan State at home. I'm keeping them down low. I don't think that they're that good. And I think, once again, I'm going to look at the opponent. I think that over the course of the season, we will realize that actually Virginia wasn't very good of a team, and it wasn't a good win for Maryland to go out there and get the win. I'm sorry. If you're a Maryland fan and you're listening to this, I'm sorry. I've been trying to be with you guys. I just can't do it anymore. I can't do it. I'm sorry.
I mean, they did what they were supposed to do, right? You're a middle of the pack Big Ten team, and Virginia is I don't know if they're a bottom feeder, but they're a bottom half of the conference ACC team. So you go in there, and yeah, it's a home environment for Virginia, but you should still be able to win that game. I think every single time you play. That's just me personally.
Yeah.
Whether it's at home or whether it's on the road. So you did what you were supposed to do. That's great. But talk about non-conference games. Did you see that graphic at the end of the Maryland game where they have 13 straight wins in non-conference, second most in college football current streak?
Really?
Yeah, tied with Tennessee. Georgia has the most at 24 in a row. That's their current streak. So
Wait, did Georgia end up winning tonight? I left before that game finished.
yeah, I think so. I think
that
last time I
stinks.
checked, there was like 18 seconds left, and they
That
were up by
stinks.
1.
Sorry, I'm going off SEC. That we shouldn't be talking about that, but I don't
No,
know
it's
who
okay.
won.
We can talk about how much the SEC sucks whenever you want. But one team that did not prove that tonight was Wisconsin. Wisconsin embarrassed the Big Ten in my mind, and I get nobody was picking Wisconsin to win that game, but to just be completely outmatched, to be completely outcoached, to be just I don't think there was anything that Wisconsin did tonight that was better than Maryland. Granted, they lost their starting quarterback. I get that. And Tyler Van Dyke looked good for the first parts of that game when he was in. But I still think Alabama's athleticism and everything they were doing would have taken over eventually. And it was not a great way for the Big Ten to start their day. What were your thoughts, Kent?
I think that when the game started, I had a lot more confidence in Wisconsin based on that first drive, taking the first lead of the game, scoring the first points. And then exactly what you just said, when Tyler went down, I knew immediately that was pretty much the end of the game because, and it was, by the way, like nothing really happened after that for Wisconsin in their favor. It just felt like Alabama was just a little bit too much in every single thing. It was like, Milroe would try to scramble out and he was just barely past the tackler, or they would make a pass and it was just past the defender in the end zone. They were just a little bit better at every single thing once Tyler went down. And I don't know. It was still a fun college football game for me because of the excitement and the two team names and the way that the game started. And I was able to get on Twitter and say yeah, baby, here we go. We're this is not don't stop the count. We're just getting started right now. But man, Alabama was just too much. And I will say, I don't think that Alabama is this unbeatable team that they've been. They have a handful of teams that you can go back to in the last 10, 12 years. And it's that team's unbeatable. They're undefeated. And they're also impossible to beat with any other college football team. I don't think that's the case. I think Oregon could beat Alabama. I think Ohio State could beat Alabama. I think USC could do it. I think Penn State could do it. I think Nebraska versus Alabama would be a great game. I don't know if Nebraska necessarily would win that game, but I think it would be a lot of fun. So I think it was just one of a case of they got a team that lost their quarterback and they already weren't that great to begin with. So good for them. They won the game, but I wasn't impressed with Alabama. I'll say that.
Well, and I think Wisconsin caught Alabama at the wrong time too, right? Alabama just struggled last week with South Florida, and they're obviously coming in now, and they're a little bit more on on the radar and trying to figure out what they're going to do, and more
Right.
motivated than they were before. I think a similar thing happened tonight with Purdue, where I was thinking, oh, Purdue has a chance here, and they never had a chance. Never once did they have a chance with anything. There was nothing that Notre Dame was doing that Purdue was doing better. There was nothing that Purdue was doing better than Notre Dame in this game at all. And for me, that's why I moved Purdue down below Wisconsin. It's like, okay, Wisconsin lost at home with their backup starting quarterback to Alabama, and then Purdue loses at home by a lot more to, I believe, a worse team because they just lost to Northern Illinois the week before. But guess what? If Notre Dame had beaten Northern Illinois last week, I think you would have had a better game this week between Purdue and Notre Dame because they wouldn't have been as on notice. But they have their week where they fall, and then they come back and they're more motivated than ever, and they just destroy Purdue. It's just unfortunate for Purdue because I do think Purdue could have stood a chance if they didn't have the motivation or if Notre Dame didn't have the motivation they had, but they did.
Where do you have Purdue at? Again, I should probably just pull it up on Twitter so I can see it.
Yeah, I'm third last.
Okay.
I still have Northwestern behind him. You put Northwestern in front of him.
I did. You know me and Northwestern though are like tight. You don't act like this is a surprise to you that I put Northwestern in front of Purdue. Like that's my school, man.
They struggled at the beginning of that game.
They don't look good. I'm not lying. Like don't look. These are my power rankings. I can do it however I want. If I want to have Northwestern in front of Purdue, I'm gonna do it.
All right.
I'm gonna do it. Okay.
You dropped Washington a lot though, man. You have Washington. You have even Washington below Northwestern and Wisconsin. Like, what's your thought process there? I mean, I wasn't impressed with Washington today. Don't get me wrong. I think that they should have beat Washington State. I think they have more talent on their team, and I think that Jed Fish, has some explaining to do with how some stuff went in that game. But overall, like, I know Washington got screwed in a couple places with a couple calls, so I'm not, trying to say that there wasn't anything like that. But still, like, I thought Washington would have beat Washington State, and Washington State comes in and they beat them in a whole lot of areas that I thought Washington would have done better. And what were your thoughts?
Well, Washington is a team that I picked to be near the bottom. In fact, I think I had them tied for last place in the Big Ten when I did my original summer prediction. So I was just waiting for a reason to drop them down to the bottom, and this was it. They lose to Washington State. I was like, there it is. There it is right there. They're done. They're down at the bottom. I just don't think that they're that great. Like the games that I've watched of theirs, which has only been 2 so far, they haven't looked that impressive to me. Like they don't look like they're better than even like Wisconsin or like Maryland or Iowa. And again, I always go back to this, and it's something that I'll hark on a lot on this show if I do it again, or if we end up doing this every week, is like, I don't know. Like, I can see an argument for when you're looking at my power rankings. Could Washington beat Northwestern? Probably, maybe. Okay, like I would listen to people in the comments about that. But above that, though, like I feel pretty confident about the rest of the teams that are above them, the other 14 teams that are above them, beating them on a neutral field. I just don't like Washington that much. I don't think that they've showed us enough.
I think that Washington's defense is a little bit better than I think some people give them credit for. I think a lot of people are excited for Will Rogers and some of the oh wow, I just saw On3 posted that the University of Florida Board of Trustees has called a meeting for Sunday morning. Oh my gosh, could Billy Napier be fired 3 games into the season?
They should have did it on the field, like Arizona State did a couple years ago.
Pulled a Herm Edwards. Yeah, no, I think Washington's defense is better than I think some people give them credit for. I think this is more than Jonah Coleman, Will Rogers, and the wide receiver core that they have. They have 2 good wide receivers, and is it Giles Jackson? And then Denzel Boston, I think, is a good wide receiver as well. But I look at this team and I believe more in their defense than I think some other people are. And I think they held Washington State tonight to what, 24? Like, Washington State's a good offensive football team. That's a pretty good accomplishment for them. Granted, this is essentially a G5 team. They were P5 last year, so, not exactly the same. But still, like, for me, it was the offense tonight that didn't get it done in the Apple Cup, and they probably, they left some more out there that they should have been able to do. The defense, in my mind, played well enough. I predicted Washington State would only score 24 points, and I said Washington could get up in the 40s because that's how much I believed in this Washington offense. But after today, I don't think so very much at all, and so I dropped them a bunch of spots. But yeah,
Here's what will be a big
mullet.
indication for you next week is that Northwestern's coming out to Washington. It's either next week or the week after. I think it's next week. So if Northwestern can come out there and upset, quote unquote, Washington next week, I think that you'll be completely off Washington after that. You would have to be, right?
Yeah, if Northwestern beats them or has a close game with them, yeah, if you're Washington, you should have no business being in a 1-2 score football game with Northwestern in the third quarter.
I think Northwestern's going to win. That's why I put them ahead of them. That's why they're ahead of them in the power rankings.
Call your shot.
I'm going to call my shot. And here's the thing, too. Like, if anybody has beef with that, we're talking about like 2 of the 5 like bottom Big Ten teams. Like, how dare you put Washington below Northwestern? It's like, okay, so you were fine with everything 1 through 14, and then you're mad about like me switching 15 and 16. Like, that's actually the biggest pushback I get. It's always at the bottom of the rankings. It's like, okay, cool. Sorry that I had your team 12. They should be 11. You're right.
That's how I know this is a good Big Ten podcast. Personally, is that like we like all of our top 5 in the Big Ten stayed the same, and we're at 40 minutes now, and probably 20-25 of these minutes have been talking about Michigan State, Maryland, Rutgers, Washington, Wisconsin, Purdue, Northwestern. Like,
yeah. Because no one's gonna get in your mentions and be like, "How dare you with Ohio State?"
Right?
Like, no one's gonna say that.
Well, and when I first started doing these power rankings, that's what I thought I would get a whole lot more of. I thought I'd get a whole lot more Penn State fans coming in and being like, "Oh, you think USC is better than Penn State?" Or, last year, like I put Ohio State above Michigan at one point, I think later on in the year, because of all the Connor Stallion stuff and everything like that. And I really didn't get all that much pushback from it. People were still commenting on like the 14th, 15th spots, and I'm like,
yeah,
I thought
people
will
be furious that their team is too low, but never give you love when they're like in the right spot, like, or at the. It's fine though. This just comes with the territory. Like, I started this show. I have 31 notifications right now on Twitter. I can't wait to go get in bed and read all of them and be like, oh my God, this Rutgers fan thinks that I have them in the wrong spot. Whatever it is, I don't know. I don't know. Well, it'll be fun though.
Yeah, it'll be fun. OHIO podcast says Purdue versus Northwestern is more of a basketball game, so they have that going. So we'll have more conversation on that when we get to basketball season.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Wait, when do they play though?
I don't know when they play.
That's actually going to be like a good football game. Do they play?
Yeah, on November 2nd.
Oh man, babe, I'm busy on November 2nd. I gotta watch Northwestern. You know what? We should go to that game. That would be a game to go to. By that point, like, they're both going to be like completely irrelevant teams. There's going to be no one there. I feel like the tickets are going to be super cheap. Like, oh my God. But you know what I really want to do is actually go to the Northwestern, the new field. I would rather go there. I wish that game was at Northwestern. That would be a great game to go to.
Yeah, no, for sure. That would be awesome. We have David here. He's talking about Minnesota, so let's talk about them for a minute. We did kind of skip over them. Another impressive game by Minnesota. Definitely only giving up 172 total yards and 3 interceptions. I mean, it is Nevada, but still, like, for me, that's 2 shutouts in a row. Granted, Rhode Island and Nevada, they're not, world breaker teams, but still, you take care of business against the teams you're supposed to take care of business against. And Max Brosmer, I had my critiques of him last week. He had an interception this week, but still, I like overall, I thought he did well. I think that PJ Flick is accommodating the offense slightly more to Max Brosmer, which I think that's like the biggest critique of him right now, is that he is not running an offense that I think he is capable of running. And really, that critique is more on PJ Fleck than it is Max Brosmer. So maybe, my criticism is misplaced there, but I think most Minnesota fans would agree with me there on that one. So However, I think that Minnesota was very impressive. 2 shutouts in a row. Doesn't matter who that's against. Very few teams even get 1 shutout in a season. So doing 2 in a row like that, that's impressive. And ultimately, that's why I moved them up and had to keep moving Rutgers down. It sucks for Rutgers. I hate that I had to drop them 5 spots, but there were teams that looked impressive today and did a good job, and I think they should be rewarded for that. What do you think, Kit?
I think that I know the question is about Minnesota, but when I look at yours, the only thing that I really have a problem with is Rutgers, but I'm not going to like go crazy on you about it because they didn't play this week, right? So like it's hard to like at the beginning of the season when there's like bye games, it's like or off weeks, whatever you want to call it. It's hard to say like a team that was off was like better than a team that went and got a good win, like Maryland, for example, when you compare it to Rutgers. But going back to Minnesota, though, I think that this week, as far as doing power rankings, it's the hardest week to do it because we know the least amount right now that we will ever know from now until the rest of the season when it comes to matchups against teams in the Big Ten. Like we will have so many Big Ten matchups next week, you'll be able to definitively say Iowa is better than Minnesota or Minnesota is better than Iowa because that game is happening next week and we will know for sure. So this is always the toughest week. I don't love Minnesota. I love Minnesota basketball, JR. You know that more than anyone. Like I've said before, like you know me more than anyone. I love Minnesota basketball. I just am not loving what I've seen from their football team so far. But I started them out at 17 after they lost to UNC, which is like a decent team to lose to. And then I moved them up to 14 after week 2. I have moved them all the way up to 11 after week 3. So if you're a Gophers fan, you have to at least respect that I'm noticing the wins and noticing the improvement since week 1. And I have been climbing you in the rankings throughout the year. So that's kind of where I stand on Minnesota. And hey, you go pick up a win against Iowa next week, it's only going to go up from there. So they started out behind the 8 ball with a loss, so like they had to work their way back up, but I don't know. That's going to be a fun one next week though. Iowa, Minnesota, man.
At Minnesota, coming off the punt return last year, Iowa.
Oh
gave
man,
up
I
a punt
forgot about
return.
that. Yes,
Yeah,
dude.
Iowa gave up a punt return for a touchdown today against Troy. That was crazy. Literally, just as I was as he was punting that ball, I was thinking to myself, Iowa's special teams doesn't look as good this year as it has in years past. I wonder what's going on. And then all of a sudden, he took that ball and just went to the side. I was like, oh, he's gonna house this. It's like this is over.
That dude
All right.
was floating down the sidelines
He
too.
was. He
Yeah.
was. All right, a few comments here. Kevin says, my Nittany Lions are number 2 after the Buckeyes, of course. I'm overreacting to everything because did you not see Georgia just win 13-12? And he says, we are. Honestly, if somebody were to put Penn State at number 2, I wouldn't have a huge problem with it. I still think USC is probably better because, and granted, LSU is not a good football team. LSU barely beat South Carolina today, and just overall, I think Brian Kelly is not, I don't want to say he's not a good football coach, but he's not going to win the big games. He's not going to do the things that he needs to do to be a good football coach. So, he's fine, but he's going to build you, not respectable. He's going to build you a program that's going to be up there in the rankings and is going to have hype every single year. But you're going to go to a bowl game and you're going to lose, and you're going to have these games like this against South Carolina. So for me, I don't know how much I let that affect USC, but then I also look at West Virginia, and I don't know if West Virginia is any better than LSU. Granted, you did beat West Virginia on the road, and you handled them pretty well. I mean, much better than USC handled LSU. So, I mean, I can see an argument there for it. I put USC above Penn State. I believe you did as well, right, Kent? So, but I mean, do you see the argument for Penn State over USC?
No, I don't. I'm sorry, Kevin. Appreciate the comment, Kevin, but if you're going to compare Georgia and Kentucky to Penn State and Bowling Green, I can't get with you on that, man. I understand that they had a close game, a 3-point win against Bowling Green, but that's Bowling Green. Georgia was playing an SEC team. That's Kentucky. So, yeah, Georgia's supposed to be way better than them, but Penn State's supposed to be way, way better than Bowling Green. Like that's a different level of how much better they should be. Now, I love Penn State. I've been on Penn State for like 3 years right now. I want them to win the Big Ten. I'm a big Nicholas Singleton fan. I love Drew Aller. I can't put them ahead of USC right now just based on the games that have happened. LSU is a better win than anything that Penn State's done. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Especially with it being like, I know they were both road wins, right? But like USC looked way better in their road win. If you're comparing West Virginia and LSU, like you were talking about, like USC was so impressive in that first week that like I had to jump them up to number 2. And they haven't really had a letdown yet either. That's the other thing.
Yeah. Kevin says I'm not comparing in that way. I'm saying anything can happen on Saturday. Thanks. Yep. Thanks for being here, Kevin. Thanks for the comment. We appreciate it. I'm looking forward to October 12th. It's going to be awesome. October 12th, you have Ohio State and Oregon that day, and then you also have Penn State and USC. That's at USC. So if Penn State goes in and beats USC at USC, yeah, there's no reason you can say that USC belongs over Penn State in the power rankings. So they'll have their chance to prove it. That's what I love. That's what I love.
Which I think,
now.
Man, who would you pick right now in that? Just tell me right now, who would you pick?
USC and Penn State?
Yeah, and it's at USC, you said?
Yeah, I'd still pick USC. I think that their defense is being fixed, and I don't believe in James Franklin, and I have a hard time finding a Penn State fan that says they believe in James Franklin.
They better not put those games at the same time. They can't be at the same time, right?
I don't think they will be. They are both on the West Coast, but I imagine probably one of them will be the CBS game and probably one of them will be the big noon game.
I'm driving to Chicago and having some words with people if they put those at the same time. We're going to make that change. Don't worry, people. If you're watching right now, don't worry. They won't be at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, the way the scheduling works, like they're going to like Big Noon always has the first pick, and then it's CBS after them, and then it's NBC who they have their night game that they pick. And then I forget how it works after that, but they order it out after that. So if I'm Big Noon, I'm looking at that Ohio State Oregon game, and I'm like, this has been one of the most anticipated ones. Now, if Oregon loses at some point, maybe they don't look as good. Maybe that changes things. But I think Big Noon is probably saying we want Ohio State Oregon, and then CBS is coming right after that, and they're like, that's fine. We'll take USC Penn State because these are two rabid fan bases even more. So not even more. I'm just saying like they are also rabid fan bases. All right, couple more questions, and I think we've covered it all, so we can get out of here after that. Tom says the Michigan State team gives me 2021 vibes. Not nearly as good of a roster, obviously, but coming into the season off the radar. Next thing you know, they beat Miami on the road and got some buzz. Yeah, I mean, was Miami in 2021 comparable to Maryland this year? Possibly. I know Miami is a much better team this year, but possibly around the same thing. It's not a conference win, but still it's a good non-conference win. And then you come in and you get this win against Maryland. So, yeah, I totally agree with you. They don't have Kenneth Walker. That's the biggest thing. But they also don't have Peyton Thorne. So, we got benched.
They got Lynch Adams, though. Don't forget about him.
They do. And Nathan Carter. Nathan Carter's very good, too.
No, I don't like Nathan Carter. I like
Lynch
Adams
Carter?
better.
Okay. All right. You like the UMass guy.
You like Nate Carter better than him?
I think Nate
who
Carter
had more yards today? Let's look it up.
I don't know who had more today. I don't know. I'm not saying I like him better. I just think like I liked Nate Carter when he came in from UConn, and then
like from UConn he was like great. Like I agree. Like he was.
That's
like,
what I love. That's what I love about this Michigan State running back duo right now. Is you got both, a guy from UConn and a guy from UMass. You got the U schools coming in.
I hate to report right now that actually Nathan Carter had more yards today. I feel terrible now. And he had a touchdown, and Lynch Adams didn't. So never mind. Lynch Adams had more carries by like double.
Yeah. Oh, okay. He's saying more if they beat Boston College next week. Which Boston?
Oh yeah, dude, for sure.
That's a better team than I think some people give them credit for. I know they were ranked 24th, but they lost to Missouri. I mean, if you look at like the loss or whatever, like it wasn't a bad loss. So Boston College, yeah, definitely still a good team, and I think that's at Boston College.
Yeah, it is. I'm looking at it right now. It is. Yeah, and that's almost like for Michigan State, if you're like a huge Michigan State fan, it's almost like a must win because they go Boston College, Ohio State, Oregon, Iowa. I think Michigan State's better than Iowa right now. I don't know where I had them in my power rankings. I think I had them above them.
State higher.
So and that game's at home for Michigan State. So they could beat Iowa. Listen, here's the serious thing. Let's get serious for a second. I put $100 on Michigan State over 5 wins this year. So like I'm looking for my last 3 wins. I need to get to 6 so that I don't have to push that. I want to actually win that bet. So I want to beat Iowa. Man, I thought Indiana was going to be a win, but okay, Iowa, Purdue. Man, I don't know though. Boston College. Let's go beat Boston College next week. Let's do it.
You just said we. Are you outing yourself as a Michigan State fan?
I am.
You
Yeah,
I'm
a huge. Everyone knows. Like the people that know me know I'm a huge Michigan State fan. Go green, baby. No, no, I really just want to win that bet. I looked at their schedule before the season and I was like, this is the bet for sure this year. Like over 5 wins, 100%. Even if they hit 5, I get my money back at least. But I think they can get to 6 still. I mean, they're 3-0 right now. What are we talking about? They're 3-0. Like that's a good bet if they started out 3-0.
Yeah, I mean they would have to beat either Boston College, Iowa, Purdue, Rutgers.
They're beating Iowa and Purdue, so I'm getting to 5.
Yeah, so you're looking at either Boston College or Rutgers then that they need to beat,
or Illinois maybe on the road if Illinois is like really not as good as we thought they were.
Yeah,
like,
maybe.
Like, because Kansas went and lost today again, and it's like, was that Kansas win really that good? And Central Michigan sucks, and it's like they didn't blow them out as much as we thought they were going to, and then like Illinois pulls up and they're like not. I don't know. Yeah. I probably should stop saying mean things about Illinois because like I said they were going to win 2 games, and they've already won 3. So like I was obviously wrong about that. I think you should
keep saying mean things. They'll just win more, and they'll prove you wrong.
Oh, there you go. They should. Yeah, they should want me to like. Yeah, Illinois is going to lose the rest of their games. There you go.
Yeah.
Clip that.
All right. So this is the last thing we'll address just because one more thing. Let's have Steve here. Steve, never seen you before in here. Thanks
what up, Steve?
for coming. He says hi. He's an Oregon Duck fan, new to the channel. Nice to meet you guys. Nice to have you here, Steve. We do appreciate that. We have been high on the Ducks, but also critical of them so far this season. So I don't think we're bashing them too much or anything, but glad to have you here and let us know what you think about the channel. So, well, of course, Kent, you've been on less football shows. You've been on more basketball shows, so I shouldn't speak for.
Listen, here's what I'll say about Oregon football. I played with them last night on NCAA 25, and I was floored with how good they were. I was like, oh my God, if I played with Oregon every time on that game, I would never lose. I would never, ever lose with them.
Yeah.
They're too good.
Dylan Gabriel, he magician. He had, what was that, a 54-yard run today? That was impressive. I didn't know he had that in him. I mean, I knew he could do that at Oklahoma with how athletic he was and stuff, but just against Oregon State and the way he's able to run through the defenders like that, that was spectacular. You need more of that from Dylan Gabriel this season. All right,
he was looking like Riley Leonard out there, don't you think?
He was looking like, but just not throwing the ball. Riley Leonard.
Dude, Riley Leonard was cooking Purdue's defense today. It was ridiculous.
Dude, he was juking linebackers out. That was rough to watch.
It was so bad. Oh, that's the one thing I wanted to say about the Purdue game. Sorry, I know we're trying to finish up, but like the Purdue game, I could not stop watching because I was like, there's no way that Notre Dame's just going to keep on pouring it on. And they just kept doing it. It was like a train wreck that you just literally, no pun intended. It was a train wreck that you could not stop watching in that game. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. All right, last thing. Eric says, I'll go cray on you. There's zero reason to drop Rutgers 5 spots just because 5 teams below them won today. I hear you, Eric. Yeah, I hear you. And says I should turn in my Rutgers fan card. You know what? I am swapping my Rutgers fan card for my Indiana fan card this year. Yeah, not really, but I am really high on Indiana. So I said this in a comment on Twitter. So for me, Rutgers and like 8 through 13, this is one of the hardest things about power rankings is because everybody just sees the rankings. They don't see like how close in your mind they actually are. So in my mind, I always thought Rutgers was very close to a team like Maryland, who was down at 13th. But I have to order those in some way, shape, or form. And so in my mind, I'm like, well, it sucks that Rutgers didn't play this week. They were on a bye. But if I'm trying to be objective and looking at this, Rutgers has not played a Power 4 team yet this season. Maryland just beat Virginia. Michigan Michigan State just beat Maryland 2 weeks ago. Minnesota, I know they lost to North Carolina, but I still look at that game and I still think that Minnesota, like, they should have won that game. And I think PJ Fleck, like, he does deserve some criticism, but like, he trusted his kicker, who was the kicker of the year in the Big Ten last year. He trusted him to make a short field goal, and then he trusted him to make a long field goal, which, like, I get it. Like, you don't want to leave it up to your kicker, but still, when you have a kicker that's good, it's your very first game, you should have confidence in him to be able to go out and make those kicks. So, you know, I don't know. Like, I don't hold that loss against Minnesota as much as some other people do. Some people are like, Minnesota, one of the 3 worst teams in the Big Ten because they lost North Carolina. It's like, okay, yeah, they lost, but they should have won also. And I don't know if that's anybody but the kicker's fault. So I don't know. Sue me. And then Illinois beat Kansas last week, and then they came out this week against Central Michigan, and they gave up less points than Rutgers gave up to Akron 2 weeks ago. And then who did Rutgers play the very first week? Rutgers played
Howard.
And I think they gave up less points than Rutgers gave up to Howard. No. They gave up 7 points to Howard, and Illinois gave up 9 points to Central Michigan. They didn't give up a touchdown. So,
dude, Central Michigan, I don't know.
I know it's like garbage time stuff, and so
it's so hard with the buy. It's just so hard with the buys being like week 2 and week 3.
Yeah.
Because of what you just said, like teams win and it's like they jump idle teams. I don't know. I'm getting pushed. So I finally just clicked on my tweet and like I was like, all right, what are people up in arms about? I'm getting pushed back immediately from Indiana fans because I don't have them high enough. So clearly you put them up at 6. I have them at 8. But it's just like user preference. I feel like I already had Illinois and Rutgers ahead of Indiana, and they didn't do anything to deserve to be lower. UCLA stinks. That's not a good win.
Because
you don't get
Indiana
projected.
Made them look like they stink. That's why, Kent.
Hawaii was beating UCLA in the 4th quarter. Give me a break right now. That is not a reason to project Indiana higher. I'm about to I'm glad we're on video right now. I kind of want to just take that part right there and respond to every Indiana fan and say UCLA stinks. I like Indiana, by the way. I'm big. I've tweeted about Indiana like 50 times this week. I've been all over this game. What's that?
You picked them on your bets?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right.
I picked Indiana, yeah.
All right. Okay.
I actually bet Indiana. I won money on Indiana tonight. Like,
you're putting your money where your mouth is. You can't
exactly.
You can't
so like again,
that's what you should start doing. You should start throwing the receipts at them. Like, well, I bet on Indiana, and here's how much money I made.
Yeah, like I love Indiana. What are you talking about? When do you
did you bet on your team?
Yeah, show me your ticket, like where you won money tonight. But
I'm surprised you're not getting more Iowa fans coming at you, or are Iowa fans just accepting that?
They should accept it. Like they know where they're at right now. They know where they're at after the last 2 weeks. Like, stay in your spot. You're at 12. You're fine there.
And I've been surprised how much I've dropped Michigan, and I don't have Michigan fans coming at me as much.
Well, same thing. Like, what are they going to say after last week? Or even this week?
What they were saying
all
2
3
weeks
games,
ago was
actually.
we beat Fresno State by 20, and then what I said, what was it, the Big Ten Network account said something like bounce back game for Michigan, and I was like, well, not really though. Like, I was like, that was a stupid tweet. And then I had some Michigan fan comment on it, and he was like, or could have been she, I don't know. They were like saying something. Oh, I gotta look up and find that tweet now. But they said, yeah, but it was only a close game because Michigan put their backups in, and it's like, I'm thinking to myself, like, yeah, because your coach was too stupid to not continue to have the starters in when the game. Like, I get it, the game was over, but still, like, the starters are not doing a great job of playing all that well, so you need to keep them in the game, especially when it was looking like Arkansas State is going to keep going. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but they pulled their starters halfway through the 4th quarter in the middle of a drive. Like, Jayshon Barham was still getting tackles into that drive that resulted in a field goal, and they pulled him out in the middle of that. So, like, why are you pulling your guys out when Arkansas State is driving down the middle of the field? I get it if you pull them out and then they start driving, but I mean, in the middle of the drive, they're pulling out their starters. It's like, what in the world are you doing?
I don't think Sharon Moore knows what he's doing at this point. It was only like his 7th game coaching. If you count all the games that he had to step in for Harbaugh last year.
Yeah, but if you count those games, he beat Penn State and Ohio State. So
Do you think he calls Harbaugh after the game and like asks him if he did a good job? Like, did I do a good job, coach?
in my mind, this is how it's gone. And Michigan fans will probably find this offensive. So earplugs, Michigan fans. In my mind, like the way that Sharon Moore cried after the Penn State game, Sharon Moore is crying after every game because he's calling Jim Harbaugh, and every time Jim Harbaugh's answering machine is like, Sharon, I have my own team to coach. You need to coach your team. And like that was the whole thing, right? Why he wouldn't come back to accept the award.
Do you think Sharon Moore cried after the Chargers won last week?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah. He was so happy for Jim. He was so
That's my
happy for
coach.
Jim. Yeah.
That's my coach. He just won an NFL game. I love that man.
It's just so hard with Michigan because they do have so much talent, like with Will Johnson and Mason Graham and guys like that, but then the quarterback situation and the new coach, like that's what I finally started looking at with these power rankings. Like, who do I think has a better coach than Michigan? Kirk Cignetti, Kirk Ferentz. I believe Kirk Ferentz is a better coach than Sharon Moore. Some people might say that's blasphemy. Brett Bielema, PJ Fleck, I don't know. Probably, maybe not. Jonathan Smith, yes. Mike Loxley, I don't know. Greg Schiano, yes. Like,
I like to go through your power rankings, like especially the way like you're so good with your graphics, but like I like to go 1, 2, and then 3, 4, and like just think about the games that would be played, like Ohio State versus USC, great game.
Yeah.
Penn State versus Nebraska, I would love to watch that. Oregon versus Indiana, like Indiana's chirping right now, like you really want it, let's go play Oregon. Iowa versus Michigan, everyone's watching that. Illinois versus Minnesota, great game. Michigan State versus Maryland, we already saw that was a great game.
yeah.
Like, I just go right down the list. It's like 1 and 2, 3 and 4. Like, all these would be great games. So that's how you know, like, when you have a good power rankings, in my opinion. But, anyways, I need to go to bed though, bro. Are we almost done?
Yeah, no, we're almost done. I don't think we have any more comments or anything. Kevin's in here and he says that's fair. I guess my Nittany Lions just have to take care of business October 12th. I agree. And he said he also doesn't believe in Franklin.
That's hilarious. That's actually what I was kind of trying.
State fans.
Yeah, that's actually what I was trying to say. Is that this week was the hardest week, and like we will know so much more next week when we see all these matchups against teams that like we'll have so many more common opponents now. Like once the Big Ten play like really gets ramped up, so it'll be fun starting next week though.
I agree.
It's been fun, but it'll be even more fun.
Yes. All right. Thank you everybody for being here. Everybody participating in the chat. That helps us so much with doing these podcasts and trying to engage with you all and everything. So always nice to have you in the chat, even if you listen on podcast afterward. I know this is a late night one, so you might be waking up tomorrow morning and getting your podcast in. So we appreciate it if you're listening on that as well. Kent, you want to tell anything to the people that you're doing over at Casual Big Ten?
I just appreciate anybody that's watching this. Appreciate you guys. This could be at Casual Big Ten on X. But just keep checking in on this show though is more important to me. Like this is a fun show that I'd like to do every week if we can, JR. It'd be fun.
Yeah. I went into this thinking if people like the power ranking show, we'll keep doing it. If not, then I'm not gonna stay up until 1 o'clock in the morning doing it. But if people like it, we'll keep doing it. So
that'd be great.
All right. Thank you everybody for watching. We do appreciate it. All the names out there, GBR, we are, all those names out there. I can't go through everything, every single
Go green,
one.
go blue.
Yeah,
those are the Michigan ones. I'm from Michigan, so those are the first ones that came.
Yeah.
OH.
IO. There we go.
ILL.
INI.
Why'd you get the first one so quickly?
Because I root for that.
Okay.
See,
wait, what's Iowa's? Does Iowa have one?
No.
Go Hawks?
I don't know. It's probably Go Hawks or something. It's waving.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Have a good night. We'll see you later. Thanks.